The Converted Man here. Hey, if you're Reformed Riley and you're listening to my video, hi, how's it going? Anyways, so here on Deconverted Man, I love informal logic. And the reason there's many reasons I love it, but I suppose one of the reasons is that it changed how I think about things and helped me to understand the world better than I did before. And so if I were to try to figure out my worldview, which I've tried to do a couple times, but it's kind of complicated because, you got to cover everything, and it's too much, really. But if I was to have some sort of worldview, it would certainly include informal logic being something that is useful within a limit. There's a limitation to informal logic. Now, informal logic is, of course, the system that we utilize, whether we know it or not, whenever we make a syllogistic argument or even regular arguments. Any argument made using natural language, which is the language that we speak, whether it be English or some other language, is within informal logic and can be analyzed. And your argument can only be valid if the structure is valid. And then it can only be sound if both the structure of the argument is valid and every premise is true. And for a syllogism, you need at least two premises or more, and then a conclusion. And so the important part in informal logic is to have a sound argument, because that means it is valid and all the premises are true, and therefore the conclusion follows. And here's my boyfriend, Ivan Davenport here saying hi. Don't worry about him being my boyfriend. That's an inside joke. Don't worry about that. Anyways, I don't even understand what I'm doing half the time. Anyways, so informal logic is the system that we use to determine whether an argument is sound or unsound. And if an argument is unsound, then there's something wrong with one of the premises. There was a logical fallacy, or the premise was untrue, just on its own. And then the conclusion is one that we have to say, well, we don't know. Maybe it could be true, maybe it could be false, but we don't know because the argument sucked. Even if independent of the argument, it turns out that that's true, we can't know that because the argument sucked. So then it's kind of like doing mathematics to figure out the answer to an area of a cube or something, which I don't remember how to do that. But it's you plug in the numbers and hopefully you get it right, and then you know the area of the cube. It's how big is that rectangle, and you do some sort of math and figure it out, so that you can do something useful in real life with it. So in informal logic, we take argument, we analyze every premise, and we see if the premise is true or if there's a logical fallacy in there. And if the premise is not true or there's a logical fallacy, then that's it. You don't need to keep going. You could, and I do, but you don't need to keep going, because one fallacy is all you need to then be skeptical of the conclusion. You're not saying, this is very important, you are not allowed to say that the conclusion is false, because that too is a fallacy called the fallacy fallacy. And so in my worldview, I would say that if we are using logic, specifically informal logic, which we are doing if we are using arguments, then we want a sound argument. Otherwise, the argument is not going to give us a conclusion that we can be sure of, and that would be rather silly. So I say all this because I watched part of one of this guy's videos, and he wanted to know, under your worldview, why is it important that something is an appeal to ignorance or not? And so I'm explaining laboriously that it's important because you're using logic to make an argument. And so if you fail logic, then your argument fails, and therefore we can't be sure of your conclusion. We have to be skeptical of it. All right, so all that in mind, let's get to his video called 7.5 Reasons Why God Must Exist. And he wants us to look at this disclaimer for a moment or two. So let's just sit in silence and do that. All right, that's good enough.
My first argument is that our universe has a beginning. Anything that has a beginning has a cause to it. If I point to a building and I say that nothing created this, you will look at me like I'm silly. The same thing were to be is if a waiter at a restaurant comes to me with the dish I ordered and I say, "Wow, what a wonderful dish. Crazy how all the molecules just align themselves to make a dish for me." So
Okay, so it's a cute video. All right, so your proposition is that the universe begins to exist, but we don't know that, at least not for sure. Now, I do know that if you Google Big Bang cosmology, Google will incorrectly inform you that there's a beginning of the universe, but cosmologists go further in explaining that no, it's not really saying that. Like, I don't know why it's become part of the trope to think that the Big Bang equals beginning of the universe, but that's just not something that scientists that are cosmologists really talk about when you listen to them. And if you want citations for that, I can get you citations for that. There's plenty of papers on this. There's books that have different cosmologies other than the Big Bang that have been covered. There's a book that I still plan on getting, haven't gotten it yet, but I will get it soon. That called The Battle of the Big Bang, and it has different ideas of cosmology from different scientists. I don't know how much they contributed or whatever, but it's full of different cosmology, and I think it would be really good to read, and I think it will. I'll get it and let you know anyways. But so there are other ideas about cosmology, but the general interpretation that somebody that's an amateur going in, if they just Google Big Bang, they'll see beginning of the universe all the time, and they will think that that's what it means. But when you listen to the scientists talk about it, they go, no. Like, we don't know if there was like a beginning, like a beginning of time, maybe, or a beginning of time space, maybe. And their certainty kind of evaporates. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Primarily, I think, and I could be wrong on this, is that as you go back towards the beginnings of the universe, or early time, I guess we should say, because we can't say if there is or isn't a beginning, the universe gets really hot because it's dense and shoved together. And it enters what's called Planck temperature. And this is really, really hot. It's so hot that molecules can't be. Atoms cannot form, and you have to wait for the universe to cool down before anything even begins to form. So in that insanely hot universe, the physics as we understand it break down. We don't know what it would be like in that sort of universe. So it might very well be that cause and effect, for example, something that we find to be most true in most events in our modern day and age, might not exist in that universe. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. We don't know because it's too damn hot to do any proper math on it. And it's hard to do physics when you don't even have physics there because there are no atoms or molecules or anything. So you don't have physical stuff yet. You just have heat. So you don't know what's going on. And so it's kind of a giant firewall of we don't know. And that may or may not prevent us from ever knowing. And other explanations of the universe might be a better explanation, and other cosmologies might win out in the end. And the Big Bang model is based on current observations of the universe, and it has subscribed as a scientific theory. It has survived for a while, but there are challenges to it, and it is incomplete, and not all scientists agree with it in full or even in part. And so there's a lot of I don't know present here. But this is the idea that things have causes is true in our local observation. But that just applies to stuff we know about. And we've only looked at like 0.000 whatever percent of the universe, and we only know about that. So it's an infinitesimally small part of reality that we know about. And although it seems to be the case that there's cause and effect everywhere that we've looked, that doesn't mean that it will continue to be that way in the larger universe. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case, that it isn't, or that it is. We don't know. We can't say for sure until we have studied it and said, okay, in this part of the universe, cause and effect is true. In this part of the universe, it's true, and so on and so forth. And so, in a sense, saying that everything, which is a superlative, has cause and effect is a statement that you can't honestly make because you don't know about everything. You only know about what you know about. You could say, as far as I've observed, things have cause and effect. And then you get into quantum physics, which is like, forget it. You throw everything you know out the window because cause and effect is like, yeah, whatever. It does whatever it wants. And I don't understand quantum physics. And I would dare say most people don't. And of course, Richard Feynman, who talked about quantum physics, made the joke that if you think you understand quantum physics, you don't. And he taught quantum physics, so it's very funny. And I've listened to him; very interesting stuff. And all this to say that to assume that there is a beginning of the universe based on observations of local phenomenon is just that. It is an assumption, but it is made without the knowledge, perhaps, of that giant firewall of Planck temperature that says you don't know anymore because you don't know if that's still true. And it's also made without knowing that there really is a beginning to what we call the universe. What if there isn't? Or what if there is a beginning of sorts, but it's more like a continuation of a different type of universe, or so and so you're doing speculation based upon observation of the known, but can you honestly extend that to the unknown? And this is a question. Philosophers love to try to do that. They love to try to say, well, we can extrapolate from the known to the unknown, but this is a limitation of informal logic. And there have been many arguments put forth that basically summarize it in that logic can't introduce us something new because you have to know that it's true in order to know that the argument is sound. So logic is a great tool, but it has a limit in that you still have to check in with reality. So extracting what's unknown from the known may be not possible. Although some will say, oh, but it is, it's deductive reasoning, or it's inductive reasoning. But the reasoning doesn't flow if you do not know. And we don't know in terms of universe. We don't. Science doesn't know. And physics appears to not know. So a philosopher could not know this to be true. Therefore, we cannot start with the universe having a beginning because we don't know that. Now, the analogy goes into X, Y, and Z all have origins. Yes, that's true. Those are localized events that do have origins. Buildings have origins. Your food has origins, etc. But note what he said about the plate of food, that it came together all of a sudden on its, without any reason or rhyme to it, and that this is not possible. But if there's a creator God that can do anything, then it is possible that your food did just magically appear on the plate. That it didn't exist. The waiter came out with an empty plate, but God, in his divine wisdom and mercy, snapped its finger or just wanted it to be food, and now poof, there's food on your plate. So if there is a magical being, and that's what I would classify God as, then you can literally have food appear out of nowhere, and buildings appear out of nowhere, and things pop into existence without any seeming source at all. It's just one day it's there, and nobody understands why. I did a short movie on this called The Cube, and I used AI for the images only. I wrote the story, and so in that I go into an idea, a thought experiment where this cube appears and people freak out about it, and it leaves, and there's no explanation for it. It just happens, and something like that would people would think that it was from God or from the devil or something like that, and the honest truth is sometimes we just don't know. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with not knowing. So this is a belief that you hold about the universe, and not an established fact. So because it's a belief and there are counter examples to why we should doubt that it's true or be questioning that it's true, in that there's a Planck temperature and that scientists don't really seem to agree on if there is a beginning of the universe or if that implies what you think it implies, then we have to now be skeptical of this first premise because of all these reasons. Also, there might be other logical reasons to be skeptical of the premise besides all the scientific reasons that we already have.
According to an atheist and according to evolutionists, our universe began around 13.8 billion.
Hold on. Did he say evolutionists?
Crazy how all the molecules just align themselves to make a dish for me. So, according to an atheist and according to evolutionists, our universe began.
He did. Why? So is he one of these sort of creationist types? Oh dear. You mean biological evolution, people that study evolution? Is that who you're talking about when you say evolutionists? But they're not the people that talk about the origin of the universe, or the universe at all. That's cosmology. The atheist says X. Well, they may or may not say X about the universe. Cosmologists, and some of them are believers of different religions and some of them believe in God, have different ideas about the universe, not just atheists. So you're singling one particular atheist out, perhaps, but that doesn't extrapolate to all atheists who have yet to say what they think about the universe, unless you've done a survey or a poll of them, and I did, and we, spoiler alert, we don't believe the universe came from nothing, so we at least know what we don't believe. I didn't ask atheists what we think made the universe, but I suspect the answer would be we don't know.
Began around 13.8 billion years ago, where something called the Big Bang happened. The Big Bang, according to NASA, is where all matter was created. Now, for something to be created, it must have a creator.
Okay, so this is equivocation of the word creation. And just for funsies, you said that that's from NASA, but you didn't link any citations of where you got that. Oh, wait, no, you did. Oh my God, I'm so used to people not linking. He did. He put it there. Okay, this is a poster. This is a poster from NASA. So, why are we looking at a poster? What date did this poster come out? Let's see. What's the copyright here? Or do we know? Let's see. 2005 is when it was revived. Okay, so let's just go and look up NASA Big Bang and see what's on their main site about it. Let's see if let's see. They have lots and lots of things about it. Oh my goodness, where do we even begin? It's hard to know where to begin, right? Let's see. Well, now let's try. What is the Big Bang from NASA? That might do it. Let's see. Okay, so they say this too. They say on the NASA site, it's how they explain the way the universe began. The universe began as a single point, expanded. But this is a layman's version. See, what we need is a scientific version. The universe's origin. I don't know why everything says that when that's not correct. How did we get so wrong so easily? I don't know. I guess it's just easier to conceive it of that way. The universe starts with a single point and expands. So the starting point is a point. And Wikipedia gets it right. The Big Bang is a physical theory that describes how the universe expanded from an initial state of high density and temperature. So if you're looking for a more robust explanation, you're going to have to look at somewhere other than NASA for it. But it's interesting that, you're very selective and biased. But what they mean by, and I can't find the word created, but this is again a word that is being used in a different sense than what you mean. Creator implies creation. NASA Big Bang created. Let's see. Let's see if they say anything. Let's see if I can find anything. Okay, so they say. Let's see if I can show this on screen because I'm reading and trying to find the information as I go. Let's see. The universe was extremely hot, continued to expand. Blah blah blah. Cool enough. Yeah, no kidding. It's a ton of time before things were able to come into existence. They say forming. They don't say creating here. Helium nuclei were created in the Big Bang. So does that mean to him created automatically means creator? So therefore, what that means is in the Big Bang, God created this helium. No, it's saying that it was made in the expansion of the universe. That's what that means. So you're equivocating created to mean creator rather than natural force. And for the theist, there isn't really a distinction between natural and artificial because everything technically was created by God, even this stuffed lobster. That was technically created by God because even though people assembled the lobster, all the stuff that makes this had to be pulled from nature, and God made nature, so therefore this is as non-artificial as this is. So there's no distinction. And that's a problem because we need to be able to draw a distinction between the natural and the artificial, or for the theist, the natural and the supernatural. And so if there's no distinction that can be drawn, then there's a problem there in that we can't say what is or isn't made by God. Again, going back to your food on the tray thing, if there's a God that can do anything, it can make food appear on a tray. And that would really seem to us that it came from nowhere for no reason, because that would be our observation of that event. All right, so, going back to the video, here we go.
So, according to NASA, the Big Bang would be our creator, or our God. Well, what do you mean, God? The Big Bang isn't a God. It's not all powerful. It's not all knowing. It's not all loving. The definition for God is simply creator. And a creator is something or someone that creates.
If you disagree with this definition, you are most likely borrowing the definition of God from the Christian worldview. No, that doesn't make sense. You define God in that way, and that's fine. I don't care. I don't know what God is, and that's a big problem. Anyone can say that God is defined as X and then fill in that definition. Interestingly, you say that if you disagree with the definition, then you're borrowing from a worldview in efforts to cut off any disagreement with your definition. So if I say, well, here's a definition of God that Zoroastrians have, which predate Christianity, they borrowed that from Christianity, even though Christianity didn't exist yet. Or the Great Spirit that the Native Americans had before Christianity came to America. Oh, but they were borrowing their idea from the Christian God too, somehow. So that little bit there that you do, that if you disagree with this, basically you're borrowing from my worldview kind of thing, is disingenuous and attempts to ignore all possible objections to your definition by presuppositional approach of saying that if you disagree with my definition, then you have to agree that Christianity is correct, basically. But different people disagree with your definition. And here's my definition of God. There you go. That's what God is right there. This is God. So it is defined as a red stuffed lobster that I put on my head sometimes. There you go. That's what God is. And so you don't have to accept that. And I'm not going to put, if you disagree with this, then you're borrowing from the lobsterist worldview, because I'm not going to try to preemptively make everybody agree with my definition, because to do so would be dishonest. Anyways, so this is your definition of God, but an appeal to definition is a logical fallacy if and when your entire argument relies on that being the definition of the thing itself and not being something that you can independently show is true. Now, there are cases where this doesn't apply, and it's very complicated, but nonetheless, God is X needs to be demonstrated. So you're saying God is a creator. You still need to establish that God is anything in the first place before saying that I define it as a creator, because God is unlike other objects in the world. Here's an object. We can talk about this. We can categorize it. We can call it something. We can talk about the materials of it. And if you can't tell what it is, it's a wallet. Okay. And it's made of some sort of fabric of some sort, and it's got Velcro and a zipper and so on. Okay. So we define it after we observe it, but God is different. We define it and we've never observed it. So God is definitionally whatever the Holy Book says it is, or whatever the person says it is. And since anyone can say that God is X, Y, and Z, that doesn't mean that God is actually that. So you still need to demonstrate that God is the thing that you're defining it as. You define God as this. Fine, great, wonderful. I don't have to agree with your definition, nor do I have to accept your definition. But I don't know that your definition is true or false because you haven't demonstrated that God is a thing that is actually a creator as well as a thing.
Well, what about humans who create things? Does that make them gods? No. I argue that humans actually form things with what has already been created. Because I'm sure a lot of us have learned in school that matter cannot be created nor destroyed. So humans simply aren't creating matter. We're using pre-existing matter to form different things. Now, if you were to argue that the universe is eternal, then I would say, how come our observable universe is constantly expanding? What many atheists fail to understand is that the Big Bang Theory does not combat theism.
Well, it depends on which version of theism you're using, because it certainly does go against young Earth, young universe creationist types. They believe the universe is only 6,000 years young, so they're wrong. And Hindus believe that it's 20 something plus billion years old or something like that. So they're wrong too. So certainly cosmology is a challenge for certain types of theism.
Rather, it combats atheism. Because if the universe is eternal, it means there has been no creator. But if the universe has a beginning, it argues that the universe does have a creator.
No, it doesn't. The universe having a beginning doesn't mean that necessarily. The event that makes the universe could be natural, and then you wouldn't fall under the idea creator then. So it doesn't get you to that, even if it was true, which we don't know that it's true.
Because obviously, we know that matter can't be created nor destroyed, and nothing can't create.
Okay, so that only applies to the universe that we observe so far.
Everything. That is illogical. So if you truly still believe that our universe is eternal, why is the universe expanding?
Don't know. But, the universe being eternal might refer to the singularity itself, the little tiny point that everything was at, that was eternal or infinite or whatever. Different cosmologies have different ideas. And there's the pulsing universe, the hourglass universe, antimatter universe, all sorts of different cosmologies that don't, and even the Big Bang itself don't really posit a beginning in the way that you need it to. But none of this indicates God. You're going off on tangents that aren't applicable. And atheists don't necessarily say what made or didn't make or how the universe came to be. We just don't believe in God. That's all that's required to be an atheist. So you're going actually against scientists, not atheists. And if you want to understand cosmology, great. I applaud the effort, and I hope you do understand that by learning it. But it doesn't seem like you have learned a lot about it because of what you're saying.
At what point did the universe begin expanding? That point, according to Big Bang theorists, is the singularity, where our universe started at a singular point and has been expanding ever since. And again, something had to cause this, something had.
Well, you think that that's true, but we don't know that that's true because cause and effect might not be. And even if you insist, no, it has to be cause, well, there's no argument there. There's only assumption on your part. But the cause could be anything, or And your God idea isn't even a candidate yet because you haven't demonstrated that God is a thing yet.
To have created our universe because nothing cannot create everything. My second argument.
Okay, so again, atheists don't believe that nothing made anything. Actually, that's a theist position. Because if God's the only thing that exists, then what did God create the universe from? Did it create it from itself? Or did it create it from nothing? So why is God allowed to create the universe from nothing, but nothing on its own isn't allowed to create the universe from nothing? Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I don't know is the correct answer for what/how the universe is. And you have a belief that it has a beginning, and then you have an added belief that the only answer to that is your version of God. And you haven't demonstrated that God is a thing. So this is a non-sound argument.
Is that life?
Okay, so this is just wrong because life does come from non-life, at least in the beginning. Chemicals aren't really alive. And as they combine to become more complex, eventually they form different acids that then form more complex things until they are what we would call alive. And it's abiogenesis, and you're going to have to learn that. But this is a typical creationist talking point. They don't like that life comes from chemicals, so they just assert that life doesn't come from non-life without any proof of that, other than basic observation of life coming from life, but without looking into abiogenesis. So your ignorance is not an argument.
Cannot come from non-life. Never in the existence of our history have we ever observed non-life bearing life.
Well, they have done this in the lab to some extent, but I'm sure you won't consider that as counting, I suppose. But even if it was the case that we've not observed it, we don't necessarily need to. We can infer it from observations we have. In that, okay, life, and at some point when it began at some point, what was there before life? Well, we're made of chemicals, so we think, okay, chemicals probably were there. And there's reasons to think that that's correct that are far deeper than what I'm going into. So you not understanding the science of this doesn't make an argument.
Had to begin at some point. According to evolutionists, we have a common ancestor. This
Here you go again with evolutionists. According to biological evolution,
common ancestor is not apes. Contrary to that graph you might see online, we do not evolve from apes, even according to evolutionists. Rather, an evolutionist believes in the idea of something called the primordial soup.
what? So now he's just saying stuff that isn't true. Because we are we evolved from an ape-like common ancestor. We are a great ape still. So he's just wrong about what he said. And the primordial soup idea is one idea in abiogenesis, and evolution, biological evolution, doesn't necessarily cover that. And abiogenesis is its own field. So you're looking at the wrong place for answers. And you're making leaps of assumptions based on non-knowledge of science. So that's not an argument either.
What the heck is a primordial soup? Basically, over billions of years after the Big Bang, there were particles that rained down onto Earth and created this big, huge organic soup kind of thing. And within this soup came life. And that life
I mean, you're oversimplifying it, but kind of.
Life being one singular celled bacterial organism. And from that organism, it later divided some more, went into the water, became fish. Those fish grew legs, came out
Well, probably plants were first, but whatever.
of the water, and now we have humans and every other living animal, and everything else that's living. Seems a little far-fetched to me.
Yeah, well, your ignorance about biological evolution and abiogenesis is not an argument for God. It just proves that you don't understand how things work in reality. So, this is not an argument for God. This is an argument against reality, which means that your version of God doesn't exist anymore. If you deny evolution, then and tie that into God's existence, then your God doesn't exist, because biological evolution is true, and so is abiogenesis. Although we don't know a lot about it, we know some stuff about it, and all that studyable and has tests, etc. So you don't know about it, you don't understand it, and what you said is basically an appeal to personal credulity. It sounds far-fetched. Well, that's too bad. You just don't understand it. So educate yourself on the matter. Read some books on it. Read some scientific peer-reviewed papers on it. Watch some videos on it. I don't know, but it's not my job to educate you. You should educate yourself on this, but especially if you want to argue for God, because what you're doing is you're saying science is wrong, therefore God. And I'm like, well, no, it's not. And so you can't get God. You can't say 1 + 1 is 1,000,000,000, therefore God exists. And that's essentially what you're doing.
Me. Why is it far-fetched? Well, number one, we have never ever observed a single-cell bacterial organism spontaneously coming into existence before. Number two,
That's not how it works.
a single-cell bacterial organism is a prokaryotic cell. Prokaryotes do not include any type of nucleus or nuclei. Humans are made up of eukaryotic cells, and these eukaryotic cells include nuclei. So never once again in our observable history have we observed a prokaryotic cell becoming a eukaryotic cell.
I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not a scientist, but since he's been so wrong about everything, I doubt it. But even if he's right, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. And it doesn't mean that there's a God. So appealing to lack of information about any given subject doesn't make your conclusion correct. It just shows that you are appealing to ignorance. I don't know, therefore God.
Many people also believe in the idea that abiogenesis, which is a process of the formulation of the building blocks of life, the building blocks being things such as nucleotides and amino acids, people believe that this could explain the idea of how life can arise from non-life. If we're able to create the building blocks of life, doesn't that mean we ought to have life spontaneously arise out of nothing? Well, not really, because we're still kind of...
Why does he say nothing again? He's again introducing the word nothing here. You're not pulling from nothing. You're pulling from whatever. He doesn't understand. Therefore, God. That's it.
Missing a factor. We have the building blocks, but we're missing life. I think I have the answer. I think I know what's missing. Life is missing. Life cannot come from non-life.
But it does. So, I mean, too bad for you. Is God alive, though? Like, is God a living being? Pete himself says God equals non-life, so maybe he's right. Is God alive? I don't know.
Only life bears life, which I believe can only come from God. God, bearing life, gave everything and everyone life. And if you...
Yeah. I know that's your belief and that's your conclusion, but you haven't reached that conclusion through a method of logic that is sound, or in this case, also valid, because you don't present a syllogism. So your multiple fallacies, mostly appeals to ignorance and personal credulity, mean that we have to be skeptical of your conclusion. Your non-understanding of science just shows that you don't understand stuff. And then you use that ignorance to then justify your claim that you haven't yet established as being a thing at all. You're simply saying it is the answer without demonstrating that it is anything at all in the first place. This is not logical. And so, because it's not logical, we have to discard your argument in full. You go on with more bad stuff, more broken arguments, more anti-science and pseudoscience. And I'm not really one qualified to go into all of that. Others are. So I'll hand this off to other people and see if they want to deal with this. Whether they do or don't, I don't know. But at any rate, logically speaking, you're wrong. And we have to be skeptical of your conclusion. I look forward to your response where you complain about my worldview and stuff and miss everything they said or want citations or whatever. And I'll give you citations if you ask in the comments below. Although I would ask you why you haven't bothered to look up any of the information yourself and educate yourself. I mean, I can recommend you books about the stuff if that's what you're looking for. But, you know, I mean, why are you ignorant about the stuff that you're talking about? You just don't understand it. That doesn't make you right about God. You never once demonstrated that God is anything other than, and you just said God is X without demonstrating that God is. So we have no empirical evidence of your God because you don't present that. We have no repeatable test of God because you don't present that. And we have no valid and sound argument at all because you don't present that either. So because of all that, we should be skeptical of your conclusions. Thanks for listening, and until next time, post a comment under this video so that the algorithm loves Deconverted Man. And if you don't do that, the lobster will come to life and eat you. You can't prove that it won't happen. And after that, stay skeptical. All right, now that I'm done, it's time to flirt with Captive Desk. Hey, Ian, I'm cheating on you with Captive Desk. Yeah. Write an essay about why that's wrong in the comments, Ian. I know you're listening to me. This part's just for Ian Davenport. I'm cheating on you with Captive Desk. Write an essay on why I should stop in the comments below. I dare you. All right, until next time. Later.